we can spend a week in the Alps in January and have some fun together and meet other interesting entrepreneurs. And there you go. I think it's a real win.
You're listening to Alternative Investor Mastermind, where we do a deep dive on alternative investment opportunities and the lifestyle it can create. Join Jack Krupe as he presents actionable tips and tricks in doing passive real estate away from mainstream strategies. Go beyond the usual fix and flips and try less explored yet rewarding investing ventures, from multifamily properties, mobile homes to cryptocurrencies. Do not miss this opportunity to escape traditional assets and finally create wealth without Wall Street. Now your host, Jack.
Welcome to another episode of the Alternative Investor Mastermind. I have a great guest today, Shane Mahoney. We know each other through a mastermind called Power Room, and we've got to spend a lot of time together at various events over the years. So Shane, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it.
So Shane, you have a really, really cool business, and as someone who has the travel bug, it really excites me. So why don't you tell everybody about yourself and what you do?
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, I'd love to. 12 years ago, I kind of was hitting my head against the wall. I'd spent 12 years in sales and finance, reached some levels of success. But also just really wasn't satisfied with my quality of life. And so I wanted to kind of look to do something different. And the really long story that I'm going to make super short is that I made a series of bad decisions, chased them to the end, and was presented by the universe with an alternative idea of what I should be doing. So what does that mean? I had never really asked myself what I really wanted to do with my life. And so never really being that good at that question, my first answer was like, forget it. I'm just going to move to the French Alps and I'm going to be a ski instructor. I was like, I'll spend a couple years, probably not making much money and whatever, but I'll figure it out. And so it's funny how things work out, because my mom saw an article from a guy in Colorado who had sold his 20-year real estate agency, moved to France, and started a ski school. And I was like, this is perfect. This guy knows exactly where I'm at in my life. So I wrote him a really long email that was just like, hey, give me a job. I'll come out there like in the next couple of weeks. And, I speak perfect English. I can ski pretty well. We'll figure it out, right? And this guy was super nice. He goes, let's talk. So the next day we spoke for 4 hours. And it was at the end of that conversation, two things were very clear. One, I didn't want to be a ski instructor. Two, he suggested that I should be a tour operator. And honestly, Jack, I had no idea what a tour operation is. I didn't understand that. Now, what I did understand was traveling, because I had been around the world about 4.5 times as a kid, growing up in lots of different places like Borneo and Australia and Barcelona and stuff like that. So I definitely understood that I liked travel. But I think my conception of travel, or at least selling travel, is probably what most people's conception of is just a travel agent. And a travel agent is, by definition, more of a go-between between clients and between tour operators. So, for example, when you as a client say, hey, travel agent, I want to do a tour to, say, Italy, right? Then what they do is they go find tour operators that do tours that are the closest to what you want and pay them the best commission. That's kind of how it works, right? And at the heart of it, when he suggested to be a tour operation, it's like the company that does everything. Okay, so our company takes care of our clients from the minute they leave their front door, and it doesn't stop until you come back to your front door. Okay, and that's just philosophically because I believe a vacation should start when you leave your house, not when you get there. Okay. So essentially, I started doing, a couple of weeks, about a month of research into the travel industry, the space. And at the end of it, I came away with a feeling that I had something that I could give to this organization as a whole and help people, specifically Americans, travel much, much better. And at the root of all of this was that I had been a busy executive person who didn't have a lot of time. Even though I still really wanted to take great vacations, I just didn't have the time to put into planning it, taking all the decisions into a factor, putting a budget to it, making it all happen, and then going, right? Because that's a large task for anybody, right? But at the end of the day, I felt like my knowledge of the world, cultures, and things like that would really be able to help, you know, cut through some of the decision-making processes that Americans have to go through when they go on vacation. And so there you go. 12 years later, we just celebrated our 12th year anniversary, and we've been doing custom private luxury trips for executive couples and families, thousands of them. And they're designed specifically to connect loved ones and friends together. So we specialize in what goes on in the relationship of the people that are traveling more than anything else.
That's great. And I know as I'm sure a lot of us, we just get so focused on business and the grind, and I've been guilty of sometimes booking airfare for something and then not really planning anything and just kind of showing up and doing it on the fly. And, there's some value to that from time to time, but then there's other times where, it would be really just good to have somebody in a group, that either knows it already or has the time to really research it and plan some epic experiences.
Here's kind of, there's a couple of top of mind things that I think a lot of people don't really think of, but let's see if this sounds familiar to a lot of your listeners. I think the typical American family has a rough track along these lines. Around Thanksgiving or Christmas, you start remembering what a great year you had, right? And while you're sitting around the dinner table surrounded by your family and your loved ones, you realize that you didn't spend as much time with your family as you might have liked to, right? And so a lot of people, I think, resolve the next year, let's do a trip, let's do a thing, let's get out, let's spend some time together, let's be a family, right? And the problem with that is January 3rd rolls around real fast and people get really caught back up into their lives. And so what I think happens is it's around February that you realize probably two things. One, you don't have any spring break plans for the kids. And you're like, oh, what are we going to do now? And that realization makes you think, two, we don't have any vacation plans for this summer. And at that moment, a lot of stress gets added to the American family right off the bat. Because now, if you're at all intelligent, you understand acutely that every single day and week that goes by between you wanting to have a plan and not having a plan is costing you money. The flights are getting more expensive. The hotels are getting more expensive. There's less availability of guides. Problems keep cascading, right? And it's during this phase that I think most companies fail. We are literally the only company in the world that can do what I'm about to describe. We can get you 66 tour in 20 countries. We can get you a full proposal good for any day of the year in less than 10 minutes. No other company can do that. And most basically are in the 3 to 5 business days for one proposal, which means that when your stress is already hitting here and now you have to wait another week to get your first proposal, you make any changes to that proposal with every other company, it's another 3 to 5 days to get an update. This process typically takes 3 weeks. And so what I started really thinking about was the stress of the American family is going up and up and up because for 2 months you didn't even call anybody or do anything. And now it's crunch time and now it's really getting acute. And now it's going to be 3 more weeks. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, right? And so I wanted to design an entirely new system that allows people to have information very, very quickly, just like they expect with Amazon. I mean, if you could have a package delivered to your house in 2 days from China, why can't you get travel plans in less than 5 days? It just didn't make sense to me. So we basically created this entire system that basically says, hey, you want information, we're going to give it to you right now. and you can customize it any way you want to. But ultimately, what we want is for you to have a great vacation, because the reality of stress is that in that 3 weeks of time after the 2 or 3 months that you've been planning it, you are so stressed out that you will take a bad plan over no plan. And that is, I think, where a lot of people end up doing cruises or going on vacations they've been on before. Because now you want to be able to take that stress off and say, hey, I have a plan and I'm done. I don't have to think about this anymore. And that's what we basically cater to, is we say, hey, listen, like, you know, I understand how your life gets busy. I understand how you want to have a great vacation. And I feel like that everything in this industry is getting in the way of that. And I just wanted to cut through all of it. So our clients in less than an afternoon can actually plan an entire vacation, soup to nuts, with full customization, totally private guides, private transportation, great hotels, some food involved as well, and be down the road. They can take all that stress off like that if they want to. And
that's great. You mentioned customization, and obviously, you know, I work with a lot of very, you know, affluent and just people have been very successful, but sure. Also by nature, you know, I think it's just sort of the circle I've self-selected. A lot of us have a ton of Amex points or have hotel status or airline status for traveling. So, yeah, when you say customization, like, is it still okay to work with you if, say, someone's going to book their own flights because they've got points and miles, or they want to stay at the Hyatt and they're going to burn Hyatt points for the Hyatt, but they still want the guides and the help with the rest of the package?
I'm so glad that you asked that, because I get that question really a lot. And so the way that this works is we cannot accept points. So currently that's not an option for payment for us. However, we are a land tour operator. So we can take care of soup to nuts, everything that happens on land. And what I generally advise my clients is burn those points on the first class tickets with the airline, because then, you know, it's a large cost that you can immediately get rid of a lot of points and still travel well. But unfortunately for the tour parts, things like you said, like hotels, Hyatts, Hiltons, Marriotts, things like that, I'm super responsive to the fact that those points exist, and that in general, people want with those points want to use those hotels. However, in my professional opinion, and what we generally tend towards first, is not allowing you to use your points for hotels. The reason is really deep, okay? So, but like at a high level, let's just explain it. Corporate hotels, in a very general sense, have a lot of their sourcing for their interior design and furniture and things from the same place. So it's very common for a Marriott in Belgium to look exactly like a Marriott in Pennsylvania or Tennessee, right? Once you get in, right? Like the building on the outside is way different, but once you get in, it's the same, right? And so I really thought about that for a lot, because that was a question I got a lot early on, is how are we delivering an experience that's unique when you're staying in a hotel room that looks exactly like the business hotel room that you had just like a week before, right? Like in Pennsylvania. This wasn't good. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to create an experience where you immerse yourself into the culture, the people, the place, and things like that. And because of that, the result is we don't use corporate hotels except in very rare instances. Okay. Now, we'll do anything by request. So it doesn't, we're not going to tell you no, right? But at the same time, if I can at all convince you not to, I will, because we use hotels that are centrally located, boutique style, carry with them architectural or historical components, and typically put you right in the spot of things. So like a great example of that is in my wife and I's favorite city, Florence, Italy. We love staying at a hotel called the Brunelleschi. It's a gorgeous 4-star, could easily look like a 5-star. But this hotel was built into an old women's prison. It's like mere steps away from the Duomo. And on two separate occasions, I've had the experience of opening my window to the street and having like amazing violin concertos being just wafting through the streets, coming up into my windows. So we look for those types of experiences, hotels that can tie together a whole vacation for you, because ultimately what I'm trying to do is create something more than the sum of its parts. And it's almost impossible to do that with the corporate hotels.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think the more immersive you are too, the more it probably lends itself to avoiding the chains. Like if you're down on the Amalfi Coast or doing something outside of the major cities, it's less and less of an option for the boutique hotels. And what you said 100%. With the airline miles is the way to go. Just as someone who travels a lot, the absolute best use of points is for business and first class, as far as points per dollar and experience. What I love about flying first class is it makes flight part of the vacation. It's not something you dread.
True.
Yeah, I just did Korean Air 14 hours from New York to Seoul, and had caviar and Krug champagne and Johnny Walker Blue Label, and it's I didn't want to get off the plane. It was really it's epic. So if anyone has a chance to do a true business or international first class, it's well worth it if you can get a reasonable fare. And then in some cases though, bundling the hotels, and you could probably speak to this better than I can, but I know sometimes when you're booking through an agent, I think there's consolidator fares where in some cases you could actually, if you're just paying for business class, sometimes it's way cheaper as part of the package than it would be if you just go on Expedia and look for a business class ticket.
100%. So I'll tell you what we do. We don't really do flights other than for the people doing our tours. And if those people do want help with their flights, we absolutely do that as part of our process. And we absolutely have access to unpublished rates that you do not have access to. Now, we do charge a 20% surcharge on all the flights that we sell, which allows us to manage those flights for our clients. And while that may not seem like that big of a deal, I want you to keep in mind, Jack, that we also arrange all private English-speaking transportation starting from your house and any time that you have your luggage. So what that means is when we're tracking your flights, that means you don't have to let us know when there's a delay on your flight. You don't have to let us know, for maintenance issues and stuff like that. So we can outsource all the stress that you have. You just basically get on your flight and you'll know that your ride is waiting for you when you arrive, because ultimately we're trying to make sure you don't have problems. And that is the biggest thing that I would say is an advantage to hiring a travel professional as opposed to doing it yourself. And like somebody's asked me so many times, like, why should I hire you? And the simplest, fastest way to explain this is this. Jack, raise your hand if you would like to be the one dealing with emergencies as they happen. No? Not raising your hand?
Absolutely not.
So weird. Here's the thing, right? Like in the last couple of months of this travel season, which has been absolutely huge, I've seen all kinds of stuff already. And, nobody wants to be dealing with those, right? We just happen to be set up to know what those problems can be and to answer them before our clients even know there's a problem. This is a very common thing that I've done is, we do the private English speaking transportation. So like, for example, we've had clients that were supposed to go from their hotel to the train station, train to another city, another car to take them to the hotel. Super simple, super easy. Travelers do this all the time. Now, here's what also is common. Train strikes, right? Especially in places like Italy and France and stuff like that. And so our client woke up at 8 a.m., they had their breakfast, they got in their car, and that's when they were informed that at 2 a.m. there was a train strike, and that instead of being taken to the train station, that we were going to arrange for the car to take them all the way to the next stop. And because it was far, we were going to stop along the way in this charming little village, give them some time to walk around, stretch their legs, have some lunch, and then head to the rest of the way. Which one do you really prefer? Because if you are planning your own vacation and that happens, You woke up at 8 a.m. and during breakfast, you were stressed out figuring out how you're going to get to the next hotel. Because if you don't, they cancel it. And there's so many people traveling right now that you're probably not gonna be able to stay in the hotel you're in. So what do you want to do? What kind of vacation do you want to have? And if your answer is to have somebody else do that, then we're a great fit because we take care of a lot more than that. But that in and of itself is enough.
Yeah, just a point on obviously, working with a group like yours as a travel agent, that's an amazing value add. And you want to be careful not to use the low cost travel agents because I generally book myself directly with the airlines for the most part. And when there's a problem, I could call directly in. But if you've used one of the no-name travel agencies that's like one of the 10 options on Google Flights and things go wrong, then you can't even talk to the airline in many cases. You have to call back to this travel agent. It may not even be open 24 hours a day. So yeah, if you're going to use a travel agent, use a higher end one. Otherwise, you do have more control if you're booking directly with the airlines to at least deal with irregular operations when they do happen. As far as the train strikes, I think that happened to us once in Milan. We ended up just taking $100 taxi. Luckily, we were wasn't the end of the world for just we were staying there. But it does happen. It seems like every month there's something going on in Europe.
Well, it's really happening everywhere. I mean, UPS is happening, SAG, people are going to be people. And I think the realization is no matter how much you plan, no matter how much you do ahead of time, you really cannot insulate yourself against all of the problems that could happen. And so really the question comes down to, are you the person who wants to deal with it or not? I think this last year was the first time we had over 1 billion people travel internationally in 1 year, and the first time over $1 trillion was spent in luxury international travel. So what we're seeing is a really interesting time in history where travel is like hockey stick growth up, but at the other end of the spectrum, the product, what you get, is also at its all-time low, because during COVID, hotels, guides, restaurant staff, they all got laid off, right? And so what ended up happening is these people went and got other jobs doing other things and are not now in the market of going back into travel professional stuff. So people that want to travel to Italy are finding out that, whereas before there was like 100 hotels, now there's 80. Before there was, 40 or 50 guides, now there's 35, and like everybody in the world is competing for those guides, for those hotels, for those this. And all of those things have to be fit together in a jigsaw puzzle that happens over 8 to 14 days in other languages and time zones. And like, people are really not set up for that. Like, I mean, another way that I would usually describe it is this, is like, how much do you value your time? So like, we on average are saving our clients at least 40 hours of their own time, soup to nuts, right? If you value your time at even just $250 an hour, you are costing yourself an enormous amount of money to book it yourself. And then you realize that if there's an emergency, you're still on the clock and you're doing it while you're on your vacation. I mean, really what I understood that to be was completely antithetical to the reason to go on vacation to begin with. Because, a vacation is a separation of you from work, right? So if you book it yourself, you've added a job and the stress of that job to your regular job, your family life and your home life, right? And then that just keeps on going throughout the entire process. So, when you come back from a vacation like that, if you had to fix anything at all, you're already on the back foot. Like, why would you even want to go through all that? Like, I'll give you a great example. I can't even have a better example. I wanted to take my son on a camping trip, and there's been very little time this summer. A lot of people traveling. So I thought, well, this last weekend we'll just spend 2 nights. We'll go to this like springs in Florida. And it's like, even though I'm Floridian, like I don't know why I spaced and thought that somehow I was going to be able to sleep in a tent in July in Florida and with my son. And it was a nightmare. Okay. It was a nightmare. So, I ended up cutting the vacation short a day because I'm a terrible camper. But I'm really good at the luxury stuff. So there's the benefit. I'm not going to be your guy for camping.
That's funny. But yeah, it'd be great to hear an example or two of an aspirational type of trip, maybe something that's more cultural. Yeah, give me a couple examples of some of the maybe the best ones that stood out that you've set up for clients in recent years.
There's definitely been a few. So I'll point out the standard stuff and I'll point out one custom thing, right? Because those are very different products. The standard tours, we basically give every single one of those proposals in 2 parts. So I'm going to breeze through this as fast as I can because there's a lot of backstory to answer your question. But the first part we call the essential tour. It's how we can quote everything so fast. And we call it the essential tour because it's anything and everything that you would need, whether you've never been somewhere or you've been there 5 times. It's hotel, breakfast, one dinner for the welcome, one dinner for the farewell, all the transfers, and a couple of privately guided tours in each city. Okay, boom, super simple. Second part that we deliver is what we call enhancements. Enhancements come in 4 flavors. And that is where people can make each trip distinctly their own. That's where their customizations are. And so first customization category we call savor. It's anything foodie related. So people, tastings, breweries, wineries, Michelin star dining opportunities, cooking classes, stuff like that. Second category we call explore. It's anything cultural related. So it's people, places, history, architecture. Third, we call excite, and that is anything adrenaline related. And so here's where I'm going to kind of answer your question really, really poignantly for our standard tours. We have a wide variety of things that you can do. So like we have in Belgium, you can go into a Navy fighter jet and have an experience like that. Or you could go in a P-51 Mustang and fly over World War I battlefields. We have whitewater rafting, zip lining, ATVs, driving Ferraris on or off the track. If you're feeling really froggy, I can close down Monza for you and we can get you into a Formula 3 car. So there's definitely a lot of things in the excite category, but hot air balloons, all kinds of stuff. And then our last category we call pampered, and it's anything that, that would make your trip just more pampered, like room upgrades, spa packages, or we can do kind of a pretty woman experience for shopping trips for your ladies, stuff like that. Okay. So that's in the standard category, right? Like, how do we make it cool? Like, for example, using what I just said, you would be touring from, let's say, Florence to Venice, and instead of just heading straight there, we would take you through to the Ferrari plant. You'd do a plant tour, see the test track, have lunch at the Ferrari restaurant, and then I might have a Ferrari California convertible waiting for you to take on public Italian roads for an hour or 2 hours. Go blow some steam with somebody telling you to juice it and, have some fun, right? That's like one of the classical examples. All right. So like, what can we do on a custom level? This is a totally different example. So we had a client who wanted, I think it might be a person it's a guy from Power Room actually. And he wanted to surprise his wife for their anniversary. So he had already contracted a musician to make a custom song with like anniversaries they'd been on, places they'd visited, personal stuff, right? Beautiful song. But I think he understood at an acute level what probably most guys understand, which is ultimately giving your girl a CD is quite anticlimactic, no matter what's on the CD, right? And so he was like, help me figure out how to unveil this song to my wife while we are on a trip to New York City. And I was like, okay. So what did we do? I hired 4 different musicians. Some of them were bands, some of them were single acts, some of them were duos, but 4 different musical experiences. And what we did is we geolocated him throughout the entire trip. And over 5 days, we did 5 different surprises in different parts of the city where they did not change their plan to do something. And we met them where they were and surprised her with her song in different ways, in different places throughout the city. Does that make sense?
That sounds like a lot of brownie points.
Picture this. They were walking down the street, down the sidewalk, walking up to the Met, and a guitar player just was walking 3-4 feet behind her and started singing it. And she was just like, what? That's what I mean by being able to focus on relationships is, we created a moment for that couple that is irreplaceable in their hearts. Like another day they were walking through Washington Square Park, and it was really funny. I told the husband to set it up this way. I said, look, there's going to be a guitar player on a park bench. I was like, I want you to walk past and joke to your wife that I bet you think every musician in this city is going to sing your song. And he's like, okay. So he told her that, and she laughed, ha 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 ha, right? Because he was playing a different song. And then that was our cue for him to stop playing the song he was playing and start playing her song. And it was like, oh, you did what? She really felt like we had hired every musician that they'd come across to be able to do the song for her. So it was a really, really cool experience that I had a lot of fun planning and putting together.
Wow, that's amazing. Sounds like I gotta up my game a little bit.
I mean, that's at the top of the game right there.
Yeah. I know from being on your email list that you also have some business events, and tell us a little bit about the Entrepreneurial Travel Club.
Yeah, so Lugos Travel is the parent company. Everything I've been talking about thus far has been Lugos Travel, but because I'm a part of masterminds like yourself, I really realized an interesting problem, which is that everybody who joins a mastermind joins with a very specific purpose. Now, what that purpose is can change wildly. It could be for informational service, informational purposes. It could be to expand your network. It could be to sell whatever your product or service is. There's some reason you want to join, right? Besides like, hey, these are some cool people. The problem becomes that in 4 meetings, it takes 3 of them for people to know, like, and trust you. And people will not do business with people they don't know, love, and trust. Fair?
Absolutely.
So the problem for the mastermind is that you've invested a lot of time and not necessarily gotten the reward or what you came there for, unless you're willing to spend 2 to 3 years in an organization. 1 year is almost a waste of time, waste of money, because if you only have 1 meeting left to get your value extraction, then it causes you to be desperate. It causes you to really not put your best foot forward. And so all of that was a functional problem of relationship. You cannot get people into meetings 3 times, 4 times a year, enough times to really get them to actually know each other. But what I realized was that we were doing trips for an entrepreneur who all of his friends were entrepreneurs. And every single time we did a trip, inevitably people would be talking about business. It was like a mastermind without any structure, no like presentations, no meetings, no speakers, but everybody was sharing their business ideas, what was going on, what the challenges were, what they could be doing better, and things like that. But we were doing it with the backdrop of like doing ATVs and zip lining and scuba diving in Costa Rica. or hanging out on a 100-foot yacht in Cabo San Lucas, checking out the humpback whales breaching while coming into the arches with a chef-made dinner and a bartender. Like there's all these ways that we were putting entrepreneurs to interact with each other. And it really just became an unescapable business plan, which we call the Entrepreneur Travel Club. And it's essentially this: we put a mastermind structure together so that we can put entrepreneurs together with other entrepreneurs on vacation for 1 week or less. 10 days or less is pretty much what we do. And the premise is that by having a week where you and your significant other meet them and their significant other, and you're always doing these cool activities together, then one, the mastermind becomes inevitable. Like you're going to spend time talking about you and your business. But the other thing that happens, and this is the much more interesting part, is that after a week on vacation with anybody, you know them. You really know them, right? Like you've seen how they interacted with the staff, how they've interacted with the restaurants, how they've interacted with their spouse. When travel gets challenging, you see how they deal with stress. Like you see how they shop. Like you see everything. And so I've been recommending for years that if you're thinking about partnering with somebody, go on vacation with them. In a week, you'll know very well whether you actually want to be a partner with somebody or not. And that is the premise of Entrepreneur Travel Club. Let's just put you on vacation with each other. And you'll know instantaneously if this is somebody you know, love, and trust. And maybe it's somebody you can do business with or expand your network with, or do those value extraction activities that we join masterminds to begin with. But at a very heart of it, you have somebody that you know, love, and trust, and you have something that you could build if you wanted to. The nice thing is we do all of these trips at around $10,000-ish or less for 2 people. And the next one we have coming up is a ski trip in the French Alps. 2 people price starts at $5,800 and change, $5,800 and change for 9 days total. That includes hotels, breakfast, dinner, round trip transportation from the airport in Geneva, and a Mongolian yurt dinner expedition and a snowmobile expedition. So, we can spend a week in the Alps in January and have some fun together and meet other interesting entrepreneurs. And there you go. I think it's a real win.
That's awesome, and that's where you cut your teeth getting started, right? Because that was the first. Instead of being the ski instructor, did you spend some time in Europe back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been skiing in the French Alps pretty much every year since like 7 years ago, and I, aside from the fact that I really like the snow, I really like the mountains. There's a lot more elevation than out west. The snow is great, but it's also not as expensive as out west, and so you get a just like a truly different feel for what ostensibly is like a 2.5 or 3 hour longer flight. So, from the East Coast. So it's economical, it's fun, it's good. And you expose yourself to something completely new. And I think that there's a lot of value in being able to take yourself away from the things that are normal in your life. We incorporate that in a lot of different ways through our tours. For example, including lots of different modes of transportation. So I like to include helicopters and boats and things that you as a person don't typically interact with, right? I think generally speaking, we interact with our car, maybe driving to work and things like that. And so the minute I put you on a boat somewhere, transferring from Bruges to Ghent, and you did that on a boat going through the canals, you feel acutely on vacation. You don't feel like that's your life, your regular life. And ultimately, I think that that's what starts cracking into the brain and gets you to get those creative juices out and think about things in a different way. If you do the things that are very familiar, it's really, really a lot harder to get out of your own way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm guilty of that from time to time, and I'm sometimes guilty of spending so much time trying to think of the best deal that I sometimes lose sight of the experience side of it.
That's listen, Jack, you're in good company. Everybody does that. So, like ultimately, one of the things I used to tell people is I spend your money better than you spend it. We're both going to spend it on travel, but I'm going to spend it in a way that gives you an experience, and you're going to spend it in a way that's economically feasible. And as soon as you do that, you've actually made a value judgment that is, again, antithetical to a good vacation, because ultimately, follow me down this piece of logic, right? What is the absolute cheapest vacation you can take? Answer?
Probably a cruise.
No vacation at all.
No vacation.
That's the cheapest. That'll save you all the money in the world. Right? You don't have to spend any money to not go on vacation, right? So as soon as you've decided that you are going to go on vacation, you have made a value judgment. The value judgment is, I have money, but I don't have an experience, and I'm willing to part with one for the other. The question now is, how good is that experience going to be? It's not a question of whether there will be an experience. It's a question of how good will it be? Because if you cheap out on absolutely everything, how good is your experience going to be? Probably not that great. Aside from the quality factor, you're going to start doing things like group tours. Group tours suck. I never do group tours, okay? You're going to be on a bus. Do you like buses? I don't like buses. I'm out on that too, right? You start making one decision after another that at every point lessens your experience. I hate to say it, but the more cheap you get, there's also a higher chance of things going wrong. And that messes up your experience, right? And so now you've got to really understand, do you want a great experience? You're going to have to come up with some coin, because there's a lot of stuff that happens for us to be able to make sure that you get a great experience. And that all takes money. I give you an example, we include private English speaking transportation for our clients anytime it's more than 20 minutes from point to point, or anytime you have your luggage, right? That's our standard. But behind the scenes of that, our company has contracted with all of our suppliers to make sure that the car you get is no older than 5 model years. I don't want them sneaking in some 2008 van to take you somewhere, right? So we've contractually built in that you're going to be in a certain class of a certain age car, with a driver that's dressing a certain way. And we've preloaded them to make sure that they're going to help you with the bags and there's a lot of things that happen in that one small interaction where somebody picks you up at your door.
Yeah, those little things go a long way.
It's easy to book one. It's a lot harder to book the other. And it's the same end product, but the experience diverges greatly. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. You just reminded me of something else. So I'm going to Argentina next month, and I've got my upgrades on American, so I'll fly business class both ways. But Latin America is notorious for long immigration and customs lines. So I was just researching the expedited, where you can get through immigration quickly, because I don't want to get off of a 10-hour flight in first class and then stand in a line for an hour with the peasants. Here's
the thing, right, Jack, is you're not in bad company, right? I want you to think about Google search an image of the Vatican, and what will you see? You will see roughly a 2-hour line just to get in the door. And that is for the people who do it themselves, don't plan ahead, and don't have a travel professional. Because my clients get to the Vatican an hour before it opens, and there's nobody there. You have private early access. Now, by the time you leave, there's going to be a ton of people. But you skipped all of that, because my whole point is this, right? Average American family has 2 weeks a year. That means you spent roughly 40, 50 weeks waiting for a vacation. You've been accruing money for a vacation. Do you really want to wait in lines everywhere you go? Because that's more waiting, right? That's less doing. That's less getting out there and doing stuff. That's like a missed lunch so that you can keep seeing what you're doing. You know what I mean? That there's a lot of things that go into that, but none of them are good. And so, yeah, we really focus on experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. Give me some destinations that are a little off the beaten path. Just maybe some brainstorm, some ideas for people that maybe are thinking of a trip. And obviously, everyone knows Greece and Italy and the top couple spots. But what are some up and coming or some real off the beaten path places people may want to consider?
So coming into the winter months, there's really two camps. There's people that always wanted to be warm, and there's people that don't mind the cold. So I'll give two. Like if you're wanting to be cold, highly suggest you consider the ski trip, because that would be a great little initiation into what we do, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But if you don't want to do that, Iceland is phenomenal. Absolutely like a whole different planet. As soon as you get there, the architecture, the landscape, the people are super nice. It's a fantastic, fantastic experience. So if you like the cold, there you go. On the other end of the spectrum, if you want it warm, highly suggest the Maldives or Tahiti. If you are a married couple or you're even just dating somebody seriously and you've never been to the Maldives, literally make a plan. Because it's just untold beauty. Like everybody likes the beach, but it's that like picturesque, ideal beach, plus some of the best service in the world. And so being able to really just like absolutely sink into an experience, there's nothing like it. I can give you an example. Like for example, when I was in the Maldives with my wife, we took a boat. We headed over to a private, not even a private, literally a sandbar island in the middle of nothing. And the hotel staff had been there since 4 a.m. prepping for us. And so they had built us a little like place to eat, nice little table. Out of the sand. They had prepped a restaurant where they basically had cooked us Wagyu steaks, New Zealand lamb chops. We had fresh caught fish. It was absurd, an absurd buffet of food. They had put up a little bar. They had put up all this stuff. And so that was just like some examples, but this is my favorite. I had taken a beer and I'd gone in the water just to hang out with my wife and a couple friends. And when it got to a quarter of the way done, I was like, let me walk back and get another one, right? And I might have taken 3 steps, and the bartender had already seen me. He had already gotten a beer, and he was already with a tray, walking fully clothed in his linen shorts and shirt into the water to bring me my beer. I was floored, absolutely floored. I was like, this is service at a level that doesn't really exist in most places. So going to the Maldives, perfect in the winter months. That's when their season is the best. Tahiti would be the same. And if that doesn't do it for you, we also do tours in Vietnam, where that would also be a way to take advantage of some good weather activities there in the winter.
That's awesome. The Maldives has been on my bucket list. I've seen way too many pictures from travel blogs. I've been to Vietnam just briefly, but it was much more of just the city parts. I haven't done the boats down Ha Long Bay or the real full experience. And I've not been to Tahiti yet. That's also on the list.
Yeah, I've been there too. And I mean, I used to think Tahiti was the absolute top until I'd been to the Maldives. I'm not going to take anything away from Tahiti because it's very beautiful, but us to put it into more concrete terms, I think it's pretty common to have, 1 to 3 service staff for every person that stays there, okay, at any hotel pretty much around the world. But in the Maldives, it's pretty common to have 9 staff members to every 1 person. So what's possible? I mean, it's an absurd level of quality that just. I'll give you another good example. I was having dinner with a friend who was right next to me, literally right next to me at the table. So he and I, completely privately, with my butler nowhere around, were discussing going to play tennis the next morning at 7 a.m. just to get ahead of the heat, right? And that was it. It was a quick, 30-second. Like, you want to play tennis tomorrow? Yeah, that'd be great. Let's do it. What time? 7? Perfect. 30 seconds, in and out, right? I get out of dinner. I go back to our hotel room, and gorgeous room. And my butler had called me, and I picked up the phone in the bathroom, and I'm like, yeah? He's like, Mr. Shane, I heard you're going play tennis tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. I was like, how'd you know that? Yeah, I am. He goes, okay, sir, I'll have everything ready. And I'm like, what do you need to have ready? You get balls and rackets? Like, I'm good, right? And so the next morning I wake up early, and it's like 6:45. I'm like pulling my villa had its own little bicycle, right? So I'm pulling it out of the rack, and I'm about to bicycle down to the tennis courts. And I didn't even get the bicycle like 3 feet. And my butler was sitting there with a golf cart waiting to take me to the tennis. Okay, next level. Didn't ask for that. Okay, I'm in. So he takes us to the tennis. What did he mean by have the courts ready? Jack, at the end of every set, we were met with a tray of ice cold, essential oiled hand towels to wipe yourself down. We had snacks at like the end of the set. Like, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I need to, we need to make that happen. That's been on the list for a long time.
We'll burn some of your points, man. We'll burn some of your points.
Yeah, well, definitely. I'll get the flights on my own. I think the hotels and the experience I'll leave to you for sure. That sounds like the best.
Yeah, I mean, the flights, a lot of people ask, like, well, isn't the Maldives far? And like, I always joke, it's, if it was any further, it actually would be closer. So, yeah, it's far. But I will say this, the second you get on property, you don't care. It was well worth it.
Yeah, there's ones that are further, right? It's either Mauritius or the Seychelles. One of them is further out, right?
Seychelles, yeah. Seychelles would be it depends on which way you go. I mean, honestly, like, Maldives is really well situated to be accessed from either the east or the west. It really doesn't much matter. So pretty commonly, what I suggest to a lot of people that are doing it is, you need 9 days from the day you leave to the day you get back for the Maldives alone. That gives you 7 days there, and it's 7 full, good days, right? But if you can afford both the time and the extra expense, then really what it does is it affords a lot of opportunities to create vacations within vacations. And what I like about that is being able to borrow flight routes, stopovers, and small tours to be able to create an entirely different experience. So that, for example, you could leave the East Coast, cut through Istanbul and do a tour in Istanbul, or Dubai. Either one of those are great gateways pre-Maldives. Then when you go to the Maldives, on the way back, you might stop over in Shanghai and do a tour there. So you might do like 2-3 nights in Shanghai or 2 nights in Dubai. Nothing like crazy, right? But like just enough to get a little bit of like a stop on your way, so that you're not doing this super long like travel. But then you get like a completely different experience being in Shanghai versus being in the Maldives. It's just like night and day. And now you feel like you've done 2 totally different things on the same vacation by using the same amount of time, and you didn't have to do that flight specifically for just that other place.
That's an amazing idea. Before we wrap up, I mentioned I'm going to Argentina. I already have my flights booked. It's sort of a little bit of business and some pleasure. But would you have any can't miss recommendations for Argentina?
I hear the steak's good. I don't know. It depends on where you go. Patagonia, a lot of interesting places. Really, really good food. It's a really great place for nature and seeing some different parts of animals. It just depends. I've put people onto the north parts with dove hunts and things like that. And then we took a little bit of time to go through Iguazu Falls on the border with Brazil. If you have time and you're in that area, that might be really, really good. But you could also go all the way to the south in that Patagonia area and do totally different things. So it really just depends. Before we go, I think what I would like to do is, instead of answering that question with like a definitive thing that you would want to do, I would tell you what we do for all of our clients. We take the time where you want to get to know you. It's my experience that people don't change who they are. They might change where they go, but they'll ultimately like the same things and, generally speaking, do those same things, right? If you like to scuba dive, for example, you're probably going to try to scuba dive wherever you go, right? That's like your thing. So it's really just a question of being able to find out what is the stuff that makes Jack Krupe Jack Krupe, and then we find the things in that country that match to that, right? And then we just present it to you, and we let you make the call as to whether or not you want to include that as part of your trip. If you don't, it's perfectly fine. We don't care what decisions you make. It's our job to bring you better things to look at than you would have come up with yourself. We sort through all of the BS. And then ultimately what we also do is add a level of safety that you probably aren't going to do. I'm going to give you an example of that. But first I'm going to tell you that Lugos travel. Lugos was the ancient god of all arts and the protector of all travelers in ancient France. It's why I named the company that. It's an homage to my French heritage. And it's something that I really take seriously, is making it safe as possible for travel. So to kind of wrap that up and put a button on it, let's use the scuba diving example. Let me just ask you though, are you a scuba diver?
I'm not.
You're not. Okay. Let's just say, for example, that you are. This is a decent example, right? There's people that make plans and there's people that don't make plans. Okay. The people that don't make plans are susceptible to plans being laid on them. So if you're walking around the town in, let's say Grand Bahamas or whatever, and you see a sign and it says scuba diving this way, chances are good, if you're a scuba diver and you didn't make a plan ahead of time and you have the time, you're going to be like, let's go check it out. Let's go scuba diving. Oh my gosh, we can go check out this stuff, right? Here's the problem. You didn't do any safety checks on that place. You have no idea if that captain is going to take you to the reef that's the best or the one that's going to cost them the least in gas because it's the closest. You don't know what their safety rating is. You don't know what the qualifications of the instructors are. And basically what you're doing is you're putting a last minute decision in charge of your life. And that is something I will not let my clients do. So if I can identify that you're a scuba diver ahead of time and that you're going to the same place and that scuba diving exists, then I would much rather take the extra time, effort, and energy to assess and really dig down into who is that operator, how long have they been working, do they have insurance coverages, or where are they going to plan on taking you? Are you going to be on a boat by yourself, or are you going to be with other people? Like, now we can really dig into the mechanics, the building blocks of that particular trip, and do it in a way that you as the client, you couldn't care less, right? I mean, like, you care, but like, did you really want to do all that work to dig down into like all of that stuff? Or do you just want to have a cool scuba diving experience, right? Chances are good you just want to have a cool scuba diving experience. So what we do is we advocate on your behalf, and we do the voir dire to make sure that it's the safest, best option that you could do for the money. And that puts a button on it, I think, pretty well.
Absolutely. That's great. And although I don't scuba dive myself, I was on a vacation with my friend Eric, who, we were in El Nido in the Philippines. And, I think he might have done some research a day or two before, but essentially we were wandering around and we just picked a spot. I just hung out in the boat and enjoyed the sun. Right. That's very, very well said.
But you get that experience, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because
absolutely.
At the end of the day, when you're there, you're like, what are we going to do? And if you don't know what the answer to that question is, you're going to do whatever is put in front of you that sounds cool. That's the honest truth.
Yeah. And third world, the safety protocols are not the same as the US is in most of the rest of the world. And if something does happen, you're probably not going to win the lawsuit you would have in the US either. So I think it's much better to just, know that you have the safety protocols in place and not, there's something happened in Phuket, Thailand, where a bungee cord snapped and you sign the release that basically says, I think they, brought him to the urgent care. Luckily the person survived, but things like that can happen in the third world.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? Is like, it just, for me, it's all about planning. It's about putting a plan together in place ahead of time so that we can schedule your downtime. We can, like if I get to know you really well enough, I'll already know like how scheduled should you be? When should we put the right amount of rest time into place, and which day and what time, so that it corresponds to most likely your most acute day of jet lag. Like there's a lot of different things that are happening over the course of a tour. And we try to consider it a lot like a good storyline, right? So you have your crescendo, you have your climax, and then you have your I forget what it's called.
I know exactly what you mean. And then,
right, the part where it comes back to your normal life, right? And so we try to take that story track in both the tour overall, but also we try to take it in each city that you visit. So you might be in a city for 3 days. We take that track for those 3 days in that city, and then we take that same track over all of the cities that you visit, so that we can create something that you don't come back from a vacation feeling like you need another vacation, which is just a bum deal.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very, very good point. Because I know just from surveying all my friends and stuff, some of them, it's like they plan, so they're doing something every minute where they're so tired. And, I think I've leaned towards more having a little more downtime and not trying to do too much, because I've done that in the past.
It's a balance. And it's really tough. I mean, we've been doing this for 12 years, and like being able to tell people like, hey, like I get that you probably want to go to that other thing and do this other thing, but you're not really considering what you're going to feel like that day. Let me kind of like at least advise you. And I think that's ultimately, we don't tell people what to do. We just advise them, hey, you might want to think about this. We just had a client came back from Scotland, and they are like a family that loves to go, which is great, so we kept them loaded down with the right amount of stuff. And, you can go either way, but we just want to make sure that we get it right, so that ultimately you don't have to worry.
Yep, that sounds amazing. Well, Shane, thanks again for your time here. Really, really great information. Tell everybody how to get a hold of you.
It's the easiest way is ShaneMahoney360.com. So Shane, Shane, Mahoney, like M-A Honey, 360.com.
Great. We'll put that in the show notes as well. And
cool.
Shane, I hope to catch up with you at an event or see you at one of your trips.
Do you ski?
I've been snowboarding a few times, but it's been about 20 years and 100 pounds ago. So probably.
Can I tell you what I love? So I'm a big fan of skiing, but like this is, but like if you did this before, so you snowboarded before, like you'll probably relate to this. Okay. What I love about skiing is there's inevitably like throughout any one day, there's like this perfect scene that you're going to see while you're going down the mountain, right? Like the sun is just coming through the trees at just the right angle, and the mountainscape's beautiful, and like everything is perfect, right? And what I love and hate about skiing and snowboarding is that moment is gone, like in an instant. Because if you stop to try to take a picture of it, you're like 50, 75 feet down the mountain. It's not the same. It's not that moment. That moment passed, right? So a couple of years ago, I was hanging out with a buddy of mine who's in his 70s, and he's like, no, I really like to snowshoe now. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to like that, but I'll try anything, right? So he and I put on some snowshoes. Have you ever snowshoed?
No.
It's amazing. It's literally like you take the lift up and then you walk downhill. So it's super easy. But the entire thing is filled with moments that you can capture. It's like every step, the scenery just changes in just such a way that you're just like, honestly, I felt like I was taking too many pictures, and really enjoying it. It's quiet. You hear the crunch of the snow. So we give people options. If you just want to hang out, like you don't have to ski or snowboard. If you want to snowshoe, it's great. We even have the opportunity of doing stuff like you can go scuba diving in a frozen lake. That lake is actually really interesting because there was a town at the bottom of that valley, and France decided to build a dam, and the dam flooded the entire town. So the town is sunk under like 40, 50 feet of water in this mountain lake, and you can basically like walk the town, but in scuba diving. So
wow, that sounds pretty incredible. Makes me want to go get my certification.
So there's some cool stuff. But anyway, man, we'll definitely hope to get you out there and do something. Maybe Maldives, whatever. Yeah,
well, keep me in the loop. I'll definitely join one of these for sure, and hope to see you at upcoming events stateside as well.
10-4, Jack. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And everybody, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please subscribe on YouTube, hit that little bell, give us a review on iTunes or Spotify or your podcast platform of choice. And we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks, everybody.
That's all for this episode of Alternative Investor Mastermind. Now that you know the many alternative opportunities out there all up for the taking, you can finally become ultra connected and ultra wealthy. Get more valuable advice from the experts by subscribing to the show at AlternativeInvestorMastermind.com. Become a winner in the world of passive investing today in alternative investment strategies. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.